Welcome into another edition of the Musketeer Report podcast. Today is January 11th. Xavier is 1-3 since we last spoke and coming off a 97-84 win over Providence. The Musketeers are ranked 104 in KenPom and 109 in the net. I will bring on Paul Fritschner later in this show to get his thoughts on a special mid-season segment that we're going to do. But first, I'll give you a few thoughts briefly here on how it's gone the last four games since we last spoke. And I think the biggest thing that stands out to me with this year's team is that it's ending up looking similar to last year's teams in terms of who they match up well with and who they don't match up well with. And what I mean by that is the teams that are able to cut down on their ball movement, get out in passing lanes, pressure on the perimeter, take away three-point looks, have had a lot of success against Xavier. The teams that allow you to kind of sling the ball around the perimeter and they play more positional defense, are worried about defensive rebounding, and they don't cut down on ball movement, or they allow you to shoot the threes. Xavier's had success against them. I think Providence being the latest example that kind of drove that point home. And it's just kind of funny because coming into the year, we thought it was going to be a much different style of team from last season. And it turns out the strengths of this team made it so that it's kind of similar. It's kind of a similar look, and they kind of match up with teams the same way as they did last year. I think Richard Pitino nailed it after the win over Providence. He mentioned that in the 10 games that they've won, I think the way he put it was, our team is good when Jovan and Trey are good. Jovan Milicevic and Trey Carroll. And I couldn't agree more with that. It feels like to me when the front court of Trey and Jovan are able to create mismatches for opposing teams, when they're able to stretch the floor and create great spacing and maybe pull an opposing big man away from the basket who isn't comfortable playing out there, or cause teams to substitute and play different lineups that they're not as used to playing or don't prefer as much, then they've had success in those games. And I really enjoyed hearing him say that. And I think Richard's been great with the messaging so far this season, just in general. I've enjoyed listening to him talk in games when they've been good. I've enjoyed listening to him talk in games when they've been bad. I think he's avoided some of the traps that other coaches have fallen into this season, especially in the area that we're in right now. I also liked what he had to say after the Providence game of the fans not having the opportunity to experience enough great moments inside the Cintas Center this year. And I think, a lot of coaches will bring up the fan support and all of that, but I thought it was good to hear it after a win. It wasn't talking about fans after a loss or bringing up fans needing to pull together their resources to pay more for players or anything like that. It was an acknowledgement of, hey, we haven't given you what we'd like to give you this year in front of our home crowd. And we want to do better than that. But hopefully today was fun for you guys, essentially. That was the message I took from it. And I thought that was an on-point message to the fan base. And I just think he's been good at that all season of saying the right things at the right times, not speaking in constant cliches and not getting too caught up in the silly questions that we media people like to ask, and just kind of keeping it to the facts and to what happened in each game, whether it was good or bad. And then he's thrown in those acknowledgments to the fan base or the history of the program or any of those things at the proper times, in my opinion. But back to the original point, when I was talking about how he was bringing up that the team is good when Jovan and Trey are good. And I think that is accurate. But one of the other things that I think has been exposed in Big East play is that this team lacks talent. And I think we've seen that more in Big East play because, one, you're consistently playing high major opponents. You don't play a high major opponent and then have 2 or 3 bye games where those guys can kind of pad their stats and get their confidence back up and get themselves going again. But also, I think you get scouted a little bit differently in league play than you do in non-conference play, where most coaching staffs, from what I've seen, the conversations I've had, are focused on themselves more in non-conference play, league play, do what we do as well as we can, as opposed to worrying as much about what opposing teams are going to do to us. And then once you get into league play a little bit more, it becomes more about scout-based approach and what do these teams do well? What does their coach like to do? What's their system look like from year to year? Those sorts of things. So I do think they've been scouted better in Big East play, and the Big East teams are doing a better job of taking away Milicevic's threes, taking away Trey Carroll's isolation, extended post-ups, the Barkley action, if you will, that we've talked about after the crosstown shootout. So that's part of what it is. With teams doing a better job in those areas, it's kind of exposed the lack of depth, the lack of options, the lack of firepower that this team has, especially on the offensive end. That's not to say that they've been good defensively, but just I think that lack of talent shows up more on the offensive end when you see sometimes the way that they can become stagnant all of a sudden after looking like the team that they looked like against Providence, where they make offense look easy. They sling it all around, they shoot the three well, and all of that. That hasn't been the way that they've operated in all of these Big East games. So that's been part of the narrative over the last 4 games. From a positive side, though, I'd say that Malik Messina-Moore and Pop Njai are clearly starting to emerge. Not starting to. Malik Messina-Moore has really done it for all of Big East play. His breakout coincided right with the start of conference play getting underway, and he's been pretty darn good in these conference games. He's shooting a lot more shots, which to me is the most important thing for him. He has to be more aggressive on the offensive end. And I give him a lot of credit because he was able to stay on the floor throughout a large portion of the non-conference slate where he was quiet on the offensive end and wasn't providing them much there because he was still defending as well as anybody else in the lineup and making plays on the offensive end, setting up his teammates passing, keeping a good assist to turnover ratio pretty much as well as anybody on the team. You're doing the things from a floor game perspective that you'd like him to do. He just wasn't giving you that offensive punch that you not only would like, but you expected from him coming into the season. I think a lot of people expected him to be, if not this team's leading scorer, then certainly one of them. And for most of the non-conference, he was not that at all. Recently, he has been, and it's not just been 1 or 2 games. It's been now most of Big East play, 6 straight games that he's been much more of a factor in and giving them a few big scoring performances and big shooting nights. I think that's going to continue. So I think that's something for Xavier fans to be excited about over the last several games. The other part of that I mentioned, Pop Njai, I think what you saw from him in the Providence game, where he goes 19 minutes, 4 points, 6 defensive rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocked shots. The 6 defensive rebounds and 2 blocked shots are what I'm focused on. To me, that needs to be the standard for him. If he's going to play half the game like that, which it does seem like they've settled on committing to him being the true center of this team. Jovan is still starting at that center spot, and they're playing a small ball lineup for the most part. But when they go big and they're not really looking at Anthony Robinson at all anymore off of the bench, they're just giving all of those minutes to Pop Njai. And it's not because he's been perfect. He's certainly had his rough moments, and he's looked like a developmental piece at times too. But he's shown more progress. And he's continuing to get better, and his good moments have been impactful for this team at times. I think the Providence game was a good example of that. I think he impacted the defense in a positive way in that game. I think he changed the way Providence was able to attack the basket because he was actually blocking some shots and changing some shots around the basket. And then he was also rebounding on the defensive end. Because that's the other thing, especially for these guys who like to block shots, a thinner guy like Pop, you like to go and block shots. The problem is when you're not actually blocking any shots, they can sometimes have a tendency to just float around a little bit and get themselves out of position. And so then they're not blocking the shot. They're never in position to rebound. And they just don't do much in the paint on the defensive end. I think there was a little bit of that going on for him earlier in the non-conference slate, but recently he's been just more physical and more aggressive, whether it's blocking shots or chasing down rebounds. And again, that's what I look for. It's like if you're going to play those 15 to 20 or more minutes in a game, then you got to help control the defensive glass, give me 6 or more defensive rebounds, and make an impact as a rim protector. Block a few shots or at least change a number of shots while you're in there. And he's starting to do that more and more. So I think that's been a real positive development from the last several games. All right, here's what I want to do, though. We talked to Paul Fritschner before the season started. We did our season preview show that we typically do. We give you our predictions, our record, all of that. And now that in the last 4 games since we last talked on this podcast, we have crossed the midway point of the college basketball season. We're going to play 31 games. We are now 17 games into the season. So I wanted to bring Paul back on and do a little segment here where we give you guys some new predictions and also talk about, maybe recap what happened in the first half of the season. All right, there he is. Had to get him on for this one. Paul, thank you for joining. Wanted to bring you back on because we did the preview show where we had all our categories. We gave our predictions and all of that. And I thought it might be nice because over the last 4 games since I last did a podcast, we've crossed the midway point of the season. I thought it might be nice to do a mid-season reset with you. We could do some new categories here maybe, and then talk about our predictions at the beginning of the season and talk about how much we want to adjust those or not right now. So Paul, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Great to talk.
Yeah. All right. First of all, first category is MVP of the first half of the season. I imagine we'll have the same name for this one, but who are you going to go with?
I went with Trey Carroll. He pretty much single-handedly won you the Crosstown Shootout, your best win of the season so far. I know he's been somewhat limited lately as teams have begun to double him more, and he's trying to work out of that, figure out his passing, figure out some of the things he's trying to do out of those double teams. But overall, the way he's been able to score, the way he's been able to translate to the Big East level, he, again, won you the Crosstown Shootout pretty much by himself. Trey Carroll's the MVP to me.
Yeah, it's pretty easy answer, I think, for that one. Just the fact that other teams are double teaming him, take him away and try to stop Xavier kind of tells you where their offense is at this point. And Trey Carroll has not just done it on the offensive end. He's been a strong rebounder for them. He's had some good defensive moments. So Trey Carroll, the easy answer for MVP. What about biggest surprise for you, Paul?
So I didn't go individual here. I went as a team. I said the biggest surprise to me coming into the year, I was trying to figure out what this Xavier team was going to be, right? You're watching this team in the preseason. What are they going to be? My biggest surprise for Xavier this year was how well they've shot the 3 and how well they've taken care of the ball. Because when you have a new team and you have a team that hasn't played together before, to have a team that's consistently top 10 in the country in assist percent, and for a while was like number 1 in the country in assist percentage, and also is not turning the ball over. Now, a lot of that correlates to making threes because they're shooting a lot of threes and they're making a lot of threes, and a lot of threes are coming off of passes. So there's some nuance to it, but still, I wasn't sure this team was going to shoot the 3 very well. And plus, add on top of all of that, Rick, Malik Messina-Moore, who was the best 3-point shooter on the team coming into the season, didn't shoot it well in the non-conference. He's playing much better lately, but all those things combined, I think sitting here at the midway point of the season, how well they've shot the 3 and how well they've taken care of the ball, that to me was the biggest surprise with this group.
Yeah, the number of assists don't stand out to me as much because of your point about it's a lot of 3-point and jump shooting. You're going to get a lot of assists as a result of that. But the assist to turnover ratio and the lack of turnovers definitely stands out, especially with what you talked about, all the new pieces. And you didn't really have an ideal point. I mean, I still don't think they have an ideal point guard situation where they're rotating back and forth between the 2 starters. I don't know that either one of them is what they're looking for at that spot. So to be able to take care of the ball the way they have, given those circumstances, has been certainly a shock. And I also love that you kind of went outside the box there with that answer. I was not expecting that at all, but my answer is kind of in line with that because I did go the individual route. I was thinking like what player was the biggest surprise, and I would go with Jovan Milicevic. I think if you went to one of my preseason articles where I was doing power rankings of the players, I had him dead last. And that was off of my review, what I had seen from him, but also quite honestly, Paul, you know how it is before the season. We're asking anyone we can that's around the program, hey, what have you seen? Who stood out? Has this guy changed your opinion at all? I heard almost no buzz about Jovan. I mean, really, very little. That was not the guy that I was hearing talked about. And you could have made an argument a few weeks ago, I think, that Jovan was this team's most important or most valuable player. And it would have been a bigger argument between him or Trey Carroll, I think. So, I think that's been the biggest shock to me, and it goes right in line with what you were talking about this team being a much better 3-point shooting team than I would have thought coming into, and not just them being a better 3-point shooting team, but that being their identity and the focus of this team. I was thinking, hey, the fun part of this team is going to be the new identity being block shots inside, big bodies and big plays at the rim, dunks around the rim. And it's been really almost the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. There was one practice toward the end of the preseason that I went, and I didn't go to a ton in the preseason, but there was one practice that I went to, I don't know, maybe a week before that Murray State game in the exhibition. And I remember Jovan had a great practice in that practice. And I hadn't seen a ton of, to your point, just hadn't really heard a lot about him, hadn't seen a ton of him throughout the preseason. I remember he shot the ball exceptionally well, and he just knew where he was supposed to be on the floor. And I was thinking to myself, I remember talking to one of the assistant coaches afterwards and just trying to figure out, is this a one-off practice? Is this something that they are excited about going forward? And that was the first time that I had really, I mean, to your point, that was a week before the season. That was the first time that I had really heard, okay, he's taking this step that maybe he can be something for this year's team. And now look, he shot the ball as well as he did in the non-conference.
Yeah, no doubt. What about biggest disappointment for you?
I mean, I think, go backing individually, I don't think there's any other answer here. Anthony Robinson has to be the answer because, with his build, with his athleticism, with what you thought his raw tools were coming into the year and maybe the development that he might have, he's not even getting on the floor, Rick. I don't know how you could have any other answer here unless there's somebody I'm forgetting.
No, I mean, that really is to me the only, again, if you're able to go outside the box and pull out a different answer that was a bigger disappointment than Anthony Robinson to this point, that would have been impressive because it's not just the fact that he's not making an impact at all and not getting on the floor, but there was preseason hype around him. Yeah. I mean, we saw it personally. We saw him do some things with our own eyes in practice that we were thinking, okay, like maybe he has taken a step forward from Virginia where he was the third big man and couldn't really get off the bench a whole lot and didn't make much of an impact when he was on the floor. And then you have the infamous John Rothstein tweet that was saying that, and I mean, let's face it, like John Rothstein doesn't tweet stuff that doesn't come directly from well-embedded moles inside the program or whatever he calls them. So like someone inside the program clearly thought Anthony Robinson was looking great in practice too. And here we are. So yeah, I just don't think there's another answer. And that's tough because one of the things we talked about, Paul, with putting this roster together and why it was so difficult this year for Coach Pitino and his staff is you really couldn't miss on anybody, right? With having to assemble all the guys you did, the money situation being what it was, Gabriel Posado getting hurt, and then missing on one of your top dollar guys in Anthony Robinson. I mean, it really just sets you back so much. It makes it really difficult to compete.
Yeah, I agree with you. And to me, looking at Pop and Anthony combined, I was really hoping you could kind of throw them out there as a two-headed monster where you get maybe this was a pipe dream. But, 20 minutes out of one, 20 minutes out of the other, and you're not losing a whole lot. Now, maybe they're not the top performers because they don't have a ton of Big East experience, but you're not losing a whole lot between the two of them because, they're kind of giving you the same sort of developmental output. And right now, Anthony can't even get on the floor. And it seems like when he does get on the floor, his coordination's not there. Maybe he's not in the right place. He's not playing as physical as he needs to be. He's not rebounding the way he needs to be. And it's kind of a pull your hair out situation because, again, if he's built to be able to do that, but he hasn't been able to actually implement it yet.
Yeah. What about the most surprising result for you?
So I'm going to say losing by 41 at home to Creighton is my most surprising result but at the time the teams played each other is a note in there because I'm not sure I expected Xavier to beat Creighton, but I don't think I was expecting Xavier to take by far the worst loss in the history of that building with the way that Creighton was playing coming in and the way that Xavier was playing coming in. I mean, Xavier was, a short underdog? The line was very close in that game either way. They may have even been a short favorite. And then you had Georgetown at the end of the week. And at the time, the way the non-conference ended, you've won the shootout, you're thinking to yourself, man, if they could get 2 wins here going into Christmas, you'd really have something to make the UConn game interesting coming out of the break. And instead, you get waxed by 41 in this kind of pseudo wake-up call to the Big East. And to me, it wasn't so much that they lost to Creighton, but it was like they didn't even belong on the same floor as them after they had looked decent in the few weeks leading up to it.
Wow. Okay. Great answer. First of all,
I don't leave you speechless much. So I don't know where you're going with your answer here.
I was not ready. You're making me change up my mindset here because I was expecting
good podcasting. I like this. Where were you going?
Positive Paul to say the crosstown shootout win was the most surprising result because we didn't have a best win here because it would have obviously been the crosstown shootout. Yeah. It was too obvious of a category. So I thought, okay, Paul's going to go crosstown shootout for most surprising result. And that's a fair answer. Like I didn't expect Xavier to, well, I guess by the time we got to the game right before it, I thought, okay, maybe UC will choke, but like a couple weeks before that game, no one thought Xavier was going to win it. And lo and behold, they do. So I was expecting that. So I was like, okay, I'm going with one of the losses. Now I almost felt like I had to mention the crosstown shootout. So there it was. But my actual answer.
The reason I didn't, the shootout was the number 2 thing on my list. But the reason I decided on Creighton was because I had predicted Xavier to win the shootout in our preseason show. And Xavier just wins it at Cintas. I mean, that's just, to me, it wasn't surprising because they won it there, but I guess the nuance of the season, maybe it was surprising, but like, I felt like the losing at home by 41 to me was just a stunner.
Okay, fair enough. I'll go along those same lines and I'll say, yeah, the 41 point thing against Creighton maybe makes that the right answer because 41 points, but the 19 point loss to Santa Clara, I didn't see a world in which that could have happened. Like coming into the season, I predicted that as a loss, but I was thinking Santa Clara was going to scratch out a win at Cintas Center. I never thought they were going to come to Xavier and Xavier was never going to have a chance in the game. They're going to be completely outclassed against Santa Clara. So to me, that was the most surprising game that I've seen maybe ever at Xavier in the Cintas Center, just because I mean, it's Santa Clara coming in and dominating you wire to wire from start to finish in your own building. I didn't have that one on my bingo card ever covering the team.
It's interesting you say that because going back to the week leading up to it, I don't think I expected them to get blown because even the 19 points, the only reason it was 19 was because Roddy Anderson went off in the last 3 minutes. Otherwise, that could have been a 30-point game.
Yeah. I mean, the 19 was 19. Kind of it felt more like the Creighton game, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, that 19-point loss was kind of deceiving because Roddy Anderson, kind of got in his bag there in the last 2.5 minutes and made it closer than it was. But the reason I wasn't so surprised about Santa Clara was just because of the way that they had played in the first 2 games of the season, season opener against Marist. And I think Lemoyne was that Thursday, the week before. And I just went into that Santa Clara game with an awful feeling that things were not going to. In fact, I remember texting somebody after that game, after the Lemoyne game, somebody had asked me, is Xavier really looking like this? Or is this just, opening week jitters of the first 2 weeks or the first 2 games? And I remember texting back Santa Clara by 10 or 20 after that. And they were like, no, absolutely not. This is not somebody like this was somebody else. And I go, I don't know. This just gives me a feeling like Santa Clara is going to come in here trying to win a game that they need to win, on the road to kind of make a statement early. Santa Clara had some expectation. They've taken some weird losses, but we're talking a lot about the Santa Clara game here, Rick, but
I know.
To your point, maybe you can just cut all this
Surprising
out.
Surprising result. That's why we're talking
that whole thing. Just cut my whole rambling out.
No, that's staying in. Most excited about retaining. I think the idea here is that's probably the biggest storyline for this team that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the rest of the year is, the idea was putting together this roster with a little bit different mentality, 5 sophomores, hopefully a few of them, 1 or 2 of them at least, are going to be good enough that you want to build around them, and they're going to opt to return to Xavier to be give you some continuity going forward. So if there's one guy that you would be most excited about doing that with right now, who would that be?
My answer is Pop. I would like to see Pop Njai continue to develop and see what he can bring next year because you can't teach height. It's fun to have a 7-footer around, and he's at least looked serviceable lately. I know he kind of looks uncoordinated and out of position at some points, but he's coachable. He's able to block shots. Of the players that are eligible to come back, I know Jovan is probably the answer that a lot of people are going to say here, but I'm going to say Pop.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Jovan. I think that CBB Analytics account had a graphic out today showing that he had the most made 3-pointers in Division I by a player 6'9" or taller.
Yeah,
that's a unique skill, and we can talk about where this all goes for Milicevic the rest of the season and his future and what that looks like and how high his ceiling really is. But I think anytime you have that type of weapon, I mean, how many times have we seen a dude for Creighton that doesn't look the part, that is pretty limited overall, that doesn't give them a whole lot else, just absolutely torch Xavier because he hits a couple of big threes in pick and pop situations. Even if he ends up just being a situational guy at some point in his career, I think there's no doubt with what he's shown already, that skill at that size, the ability to put the biscuit in the basket, you got to take a chance on Jovan going forward without question in my mind. And the other part of it, Paul, is he has that relationship with Richard. He came from New Mexico to be here with Richard. It feels like he's the most likely guy that you could retain too.
Yeah, I think if you were going to say most likely, I think Jovan's far and away the answer. Just me personally, watching a 7-footer block shots is something I haven't seen at Xavier in a long time. So
I get it.
It's exciting to watch a player like that. So when you pitched me most excited about returning, Pop's the first name that came to mind.
And it might be in line with this then too. Second half breakout candidate.
Yeah, Pop. Same answer there. I think he's because I think Jovan sort of already had his breakout to where we know what it's going to be. Now Pop's starting to see more minutes. So I think going into the year, you're trying to figure out Anthony, Pop, who are you going to develop, right? It almost feels like you want to develop one of them and you want to see what you can get out of somebody moving forward with their eligibility that they have remaining. Pop seems to be the answer here. So maybe you focus on developing Pop and you go forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's the answer most people would have. That's probably the right answer. I'm going to maybe stretch this one and cheat a little bit. I'm going with Malik Messina Moore. And here's my reasoning. I think you can look at that and say he's already broken out, right? Okay. I mean, in the 6 Big East games, he's averaged 17 points per game. He's making 45% of his threes in those Big East games. So in large part, he's already broken out, at least for the last 6 games. But right now, he's still the 4th leading scorer for this Xavier team. And I think there's even another level of aggressiveness and consistency from a scoring standpoint that we could see out of him in the second half of the season. It wouldn't surprise me if we see him ending up being the second or even leading scorer for Xavier by the end of the year, because before the season, if you want to go back to practice and buzz and what people were saying, what we were seeing, I think most people by the time we got to the end of practice, preseason practice, I think a lot of people felt that Malik Messina Moore was Xavier's best player.
I mean, hand up,
the best offensive player. Yeah, I think most people did that. Had come by and watched practice, and a lot of people inside the program would probably give you that same thought. So, or they would say it's between him and Trey Carroll, something like that. So I think there's still he's already started to show it. He's broken out over the last 6 games against Big East competition. I also think some of the other guys they've been relying on in non-conference play have maybe been exploited a little bit more in Big East competition. So they might lean on him more going forward too. He seems like he's finally ready for it. I could see him blowing up even more than he has over the last 6 games in the second half.
Yeah, I was super high on Malik Messina Moore coming into the season. I don't know what show I said it on, but it might have been the preseason show I did with you where we were talking about potential best players. And I thought Malik was the best player. He passed well. He was fluid on the court. He looked like a natural scorer. His shot form was very fluid. I was really impressed with what he could be. And then he took a while, right? I mean, I remember getting calls on Spaces a few weeks into the season. What's wrong with Malik? Why isn't he hitting shots? I'm like, guys, eventually he's going to hit shots. I don't know when it's going to be, but he's too good of a shooter over the course of his career to be this bad this long. Eventually he's going to find it. And it took him to the Big East season. But I mean, what a time to find it when you're playing against high major competition. Now he looks great against the Big East.
Well, and part of the thing is, Paul, to make shots, you have to take shots.
He wasn't aggressive. that too.
He wasn't aggressive in the non-conference schedule. It's like, I mean, yeah, he was missing shots, but when you're taking 2 or 3, as a guy who's a big-time 3-point shooter, like, you got to shoot it more than that. Now he's averaging over 12 shots per game. It's just a different story. I think in large part, it has to do with confidence and aggressiveness on the offensive end for him more than anything.
Well, yeah, and I think you heard Richard talk about it in the post game. I don't know if it was the last game or the game before. We were talking about just like you said, Rick, just getting him more shot, telling him to shoot the ball. It's being, as the coaches will always say, it's being more selfish when you pass when you're open than it is to actually take the shot. And I think sometimes Malik might get into the mindset of needing to dish the ball away or find the open teammate where he might have the space that he needs to shoot, and then he's not taking the shot. Just take the shot, man. Take the shot. And he is now, and he's making them.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a coach of another program who was able to watch preseason practice at Xavier, and he said he was talking to Xavier's staff after the practice. He said, who's looking good for you guys? And they threw out Malik's name first to him, and he goes, I don't think he shot today. So, it was already a thing that was going on as early as preseason practices and something that they've been working with him. I think Richard Pitino said that back in the summer when he did one of those coaches shows with Joe, that it's we've got to get him more aggressive on the offensive end and get him to shoot more. So it was something that they knew coming into the season, and it really had to work itself out over the course of the non-conference slate, but he's playing better now. One reason for optimism about the second half. What do you got?
So my note was that they have plenty of opportunities against the Big East's best teams to understand what it's going to take for them to win at this level next year. So, they've already played they've played Georgetown already. They've played DePaul already. They've played Providence, who I think is the best matchup in the league for them. So they have some of their easy games out of the way already. They're going to have a really, really challenging back half of January into the beginning of March. You're going to play some really tough teams. And because of that, to me, it's going to allow the coaching staff chances to see what you have to build on going forward. So it's I don't know if that's the right way to frame optimism, right? But to me, optimism is seeing the chances you have, and all of them are in front of you. So what can you do with it as a team?
I'm going to go back to your Pop comment here. I think if Pop can continue his progress with his development, having a legit rim protector and presence around the basket on the defensive end could actually legitimately improve this team's defense. I think you've already seen that in short spurts at times, and this Marquette game was a good example. When he's playing well, he's defensive rebounding, and he's blocking shots. I think Xavier is a different team on the defensive end.
When I was down in Charleston last week on Monday for that game against William and Mary, Charleston has 2 7-footers on their team. One of them's not as athletic, kind of more of a scorer type 7-footer. The other one is a complete freak athleticism, right?
He's a string bean and just a shot blocker.
Joel Machat, and he's one of the leading shot blockers in the country. And at one point in the game, there was a 3-point shooter in the corner, and Machat went out flying into the corner. And Rick, I'm telling you, he could have leapt 5 feet in front of the bench, 10 feet in the air, and leapt over the bench. I remember going into the next media timeout and thinking to myself, man, when was the last time I saw somebody from Xavier do something like that, right? And, Pop's not going to go flying over a bench, but he's a true 7-foot shot blocker. And to me, it's just maybe because I haven't seen it in a while. It's fun to see. So yeah, Pop's the answer.
One reason for pessimism about the second half of the season.
I'm not 100% sure as we sit here and record this that there are any surefire, for sure, Big East players on this roster. I'm pretty sure Jovan Milicevic is. I think Pop Njai can develop into one. But if you were to sit here and say at the end of the season that everybody besides Jovan was gone, and maybe even Jovan was gone too, and you had to do an entire reset, I'm just not sure that this is a Big East roster that's able to compete at this level. And then in that case, and this was the best comment that I have seen on the message board all year, and I forget, it might have been our guy Mad Dog 88, I think it was, who said, if that's the case, then it ends up being year -1 instead of year 0, which is spot on. And so to me, the pessimism is here. If these guys aren't Big East players, then you have to do a complete overhaul again. And then that becomes your foundation being built next year when you're trying to infuse more, money and resources into the roster. That's where I get a little hesitant.
Yeah, I think to some extent people are looking at that the wrong way. Now, I get that point of like, hey, there might not be any impact guys going forward, right? And that would be a problem, and it makes next year way tougher. But I still think, like we were talking about Jovan, in a worst case scenario, I think Jovan has a relationship with Coach Pitino. You can get him to stick around, and he is, if nothing else, a situational specialist, bring off the bench that can play a nice role for you and give you something. That's a piece now that you don't have to go find in this year's transfer portal. You don't have to spread yourself as thin. You don't have to maybe overspend on that one spot as much as you otherwise might in this year's portal. To me, that matters too from year to year. It's like not every guy is going to be an impact piece necessarily going forward, but just having some of those guys to fill in the even 10th, 9th, 8th spots on your roster can be important in this new era. I also think the idea that like, as much as, you know, this coaching staff is kind of using that concept of we put together this roster with the idea of building into next year, trying to build some continuity. And I think that's legitimate. I do think there's importance to that. This is a year-to-year sport now. It just is. Everyone's going to turn over the most important pieces of their roster every single year. Most times, more often than not, you're going to have a new best player every single year. Yeah. So like the idea that you haven't found your go-to star for next season yet, I wouldn't get as concerned about that. And I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm not saying that's what that person on the message board was saying. I'm more so just talking from a general standpoint at large, some of the comments that I've seen. I think some people go a little bit overboard with that idea of like how much you were going to accomplish this season.
Yeah, I think you're just hoping that, you know, the more and more I talk to fans or people want to ask me about the team and things, the constant theme that I get asked is who's going to be back, right? Everybody wants to latch on to the who's going to be back. I want to attach myself to it. I want to be able to follow a player. I want to be able to follow the team. And so
understandably,
which I totally understand. And so that's why when you pitched me the, you know, a reason for pessimism, and I'm sitting here trying to think, you know, from that perspective, what is the pessimistic side of the rest of this year? You know, then you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, they're clearly not going to make the NCAA tournament unless they win the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden. And if this team looks like a collection of players that aren't going to come back next year, then you're just sitting to yourself thinking, what am I watching for the last 16 games? Why even turn the game on? And at that point, you get frustrated with yourself.
No, that's accurate.
Yeah.
I went with, I'm talking a lot about Jovan here because I think he's been really important to this season's storyline. I think he looms large over the second half too, but I think it's possible we see a big regression from Jovan. I mean, over the first 5 games of Big East play up until that Providence game, he was pretty quiet. He was struggling. Teams were seemingly understanding how they needed to defend him to take him away. I do think he was shooting a little bit above his level to start during that stretch where Xavier was having some success. Yeah. I do think teams maybe weren't ready for how Xavier was playing with him at the center spot, using that small ball approach and how they were going to cause some mismatches and get him free. Now that they have a better idea and they're better scouted, maybe they're able to take that away.
Yeah.
I think that could be like, it's been important. Richard Pitino just said, I mentioned this earlier in the show that, you know, he talked about our team has been best. The 10 games where we've been best, Trey and Jovan have both been good for us, and they've created mismatches for the opposing teams. If all of a sudden you just can't get Jovan going consistently in Big East play, what does that do to the rest of the season? How many wins can you find the rest of the way? It's definitely a legitimate question, I think, and it's a concern.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. One storyline to follow in the second half. What do you got there?
Yeah, so I said both Roddy Anderson and Allright, they're both eligible to come back next year. So which of these two guys emerge as someone that you can count on, if either one of them, at the point next year?
That's unreal. That's exactly what I had.
Let's go. Yeah. Let's go, Rick. Let's go. We've been doing this long enough.
Well, the weird thing about that one is it's not as obvious. I felt like that was kind of like more of a footnote, you know, not as much of the obvious answer, but that's exactly what I was thinking too. Because I think the other part of it is it feels like probably unlikely both of them are going to be back next year, right? Like,
well, they're competing for the same spot. So
And you have to bring in another point guard. Like,
that's
I don't
what
think
I mean.
either one of them are the dynamic go-to option they want at the point guard spot for next year.
Yeah.
And if you're bringing in a go-to option at the point guard spot, and then one of those guys is playing either the backup role or playing some minutes alongside of him, how does the other one feel when the transfer portal hits about being that extra guy? And I think we get our answer on who that's going to be the second half of the season.
Yep. I couldn't have said better. That's exactly what I wrote down. You're probably going to go out there and get somebody that pairs with that player as far as minutes go for next year. So of those two guys, unless one of them wants to be the third string, which in today's day and age, I can't imagine they will be. Allright would have an extra year or not an extra, but like he would have another year. He has one more year than Roddy does. Roddy only has the 1 year left. So maybe Roddy would be less of a chance to transfer because he wouldn't want a third new system that quickly. And he redshirted here.
I get the sense though, like Roddy is clearly playing better right now than Allright is, but I get the sense that the staff maybe leans more in the direction of Allright and what he gives them, because I mean, they just moved him back into the starting lineup. And even though Roddy played well and took more of the minutes, it's like they keep seeming to want to go back to All and give him every chance to
I know. It's like they want to will All to be the guy that they want him to be. But right now, Roddy is playing the way that they need him to play as the point guard and kind of understands the situation a little bit better, whether he sometimes plays maybe a bit out of control or not. I mean, he's still playing better against Big East competition than All is. I mean, I don't know how many times, Rick, I will sit there at some point in the second half, like I did yesterday against Providence, where I'm sitting there and I check the box score because I realize, when was the last time All was even in the game, right? Like whether it's foul. Now, yesterday he was in foul trouble, but still, I mean, at one point I checked in the second half, he'd only played 13 minutes. I'm going, where is he?
Yeah. Yep. He's got to give them more, but it does, to me, at least for right now, it feels like he's going to continue to get chances. So I don't think that's over. Like, I don't think Roddy's won that job. And for that storyline that we were talking about, I don't think that the answer's finished yet.
Yeah. I'm with you.
All right. Finally, let's do our updated record prediction. Now, I'll preface this. I went back and listened to what we said on the original podcast before the season. I was at 11-20 overall, 5-15 in Big East play. You were at 16-15 overall.
So I have a spreadsheet here that has all of our record predictions. I just go back and do it from our preseason show. So I have all of our record predictions and what's actually happened. So at this point in the season, I had them at 11-6 and you had them at 7-10. So, and they're 10-7 as we record this right now. So I was one game on. The only game I got wrong in the non-conference was Santa Clara. And I, like you said, I had them finishing at 16-15. And I'm going to stick with it because I thought about dropping them down to 14. But then I really started splitting hairs. I was going game by game again, and I started splitting hairs on some of them because I was looking on KenPom. That's what I always go to, and I was looking at they had them predicted to beat DePaul, Marquette, Georgetown, all those games at home. I agree with that. Then I said they beat Providence on the road because I just think it's such a spectacular matchup for Xavier. So that gets you to 14. And then you throw two more wins in there. I mean, with the way the conference has been this year, it hasn't been great. So maybe Butler at home on Wednesday. Maybe you sneak one out against Seton Hall. I think 15 might be the right answer. But if you're talking about 15 and 16, and I said 16 on the preseason show, I'm not going to change it now. I'll stick with 16.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You should stick with your original answer. It turned out to be better than we all thought. I don't know what that noise was that I just made. That was like a hiccup inside the call.
Do you need a drink or something?
I think so. I'll pause for a second after that. That was insane. I don't know what happened.
Like, good Lord, you got a fur ball? Tino catch up to you?
Yeah, I don't know. I broadcasted a game earlier. Maybe I'm getting phlegmy. I don't know what's happening here.
That's true.
Yeah, but you just about nailed it, I think, with that 16-15 before the season. It feels like it's going to be pretty close. I was at 11-20. 11-20, that's clearly going to be too low since they're sitting at 10 wins already. I think KenPom has this just about right. At KenPom's prediction now is 15 wins overall.
Yeah.
If you were asking me to set the over-under, I think I'd put it at 14.5 14.5.
14.5. Yeah.
If I do the over or the win-loss game right now and just say like, which games do I think they're going to win? Which games do I think they're going to lose? I think I get them to like 14. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say 14-17, 6-14 in Big East play, upgraded from my original 11-20 and 5-15. So one game better in Big East play is what I'm projecting.
The thing that makes me nervous about my 16 is that they have to win the games like Seton Hall or DePaul, Marquette, Georgetown. You have to win those games at home. And then you have to hope that maybe you sneak one or two out on the road, and then you get like a Butler. Like beating Butler on Wednesday would be huge toward the 16 wins. And Butler has certainly not looked great without Jalen Jackson. I mean, they have really come back down to earth. Maybe Butler has an off night at Hinkle, or Seton Hall comes into Cintas on March 3rd, and they're. But to see, the problem is with that. At that point in the season, there's a good chance at that point Seton Hall is really playing for an NCAA tournament bid, and that's a huge game for them at that point. Kind of the same with Villanova on the 7th. They're not going to want to lose to Xavier in the last game of the season before the Big East tournament. So the way the schedule sets up is not super favorable to Xavier, but I'll still, why not? I'll stick with 16.
Yeah, and that's why it made it a little bit easier to drop it down to that 14 level because of what you just brought. Like they do have most of the difficult games left, and it's not going to be kind of them. But what we've already seen in the Big East, I think will continue to hold true, that there is a lot of parity from, really about third on in this conference. It kind of depends on the night, what team shows up from each given team. So I think there will be a couple surprises along the way probably too, Paul.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right. I have one last question for you because you asked this to me on that preview show, and I'm curious if your answer has changed now. You asked, do you think they finish inside the top 100 of KenPom on that show? And I answered, yeah, I think they do, but it's going to be close. They're sitting just outside of it right now. I mentioned at the top of the podcast that they are 104 today as we record in KenPom. I'll change my answer to no. I think they're going to finish just outside as we sit here today. What would you say about that now?
Yeah, so I had 3 other just like miscellaneous notes at the end of my notes here that I was going to put in to the show, and the KenPom Top 100 thing was one of them, so I'm glad you brought it up. I had a caller into the Rebound Rundown last week ask like a buy or sell, will Miami of Ohio finish higher than Xavier on KenPom? And I bought that. I think Miami does finish higher. And I said that, and I'll tie it back to Xavier here, that I think there's a better chance that a team like Miami, who has already played their most difficult game, they already played Akron, they don't play Akron again. For Xavier, they have the most difficult portion of their season still to play. I mean, they have some tough games. I mean, Xavier still have to play Villanova twice. They got to go to UConn. They got to, play Seton Hall, Villanova both twice. Got to play St. John's twice. Plus, if you drop a game that you should win, then that's going to hurt you even more. Xavier's one of 9 teams that has never finished outside the top 100 on KenPom. That's always kind of been like a fun little, niche Xavier stat. I'm with you. I said in the preseason they would finish in the top 100, but they're borderline right now. And with such a tough schedule coming up, if they do have a few stinkers, it might just be too hard for them to climb back up out of that hole.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, granted, if you do pull a couple of upsets, then you can definitely jump yourself some spots. Yeah. But my guess is those outlier performances aren't going to be as great as the outlier performances the other way, like we've already seen with Creighton, Santa Clara. Yeah. You throw in another 1 or 2 of those, and to your point, it's probably going to set you back too far to get back over the 100 line.
That's what I mean. If you like, let's say you lose to St. John's right now, they're favored to lose to St. John's. Or they're, the line on KenPom. It's all about covering the KenPom spread when you talk about moving up and down on the site.
What you do in comparison to what you were projected to do by the analytics.
Yeah, exactly. And so like to St. John's right now at home next Saturday or the following Saturday, they're projected to lose by 8. If they go and lose by 25 to St. John's at home, which I don't know if I would expect them to, but let's just say that happens. Then all of a sudden you drop, 15 or 20 spots if that happens on KenPom. then all of a sudden you're staring at 120, 125, and that's really hard with all the games you have left to get back up. If they were sitting at like 80 right now, I mean, Providence is 67th. If you're sitting there, then you're probably like, okay, you can survive a couple of bad games, but when you're right on the borderline, you just really have to outperform yourself going forward. So, yeah, that's my take.
Yeah. What did you have any other notes there that you wanted to get to?
Yeah, I had two things. So I had the Ken Pom, kind of some things to watch for. So one of them was, if you're outside of the players, outside of, they're not going to make the NCAA tournament. So what can you watch for? Just a couple of fun little stats. One was finishing inside the top 100 on Ken Pom. And then I don't think this is going to happen, but only 7 high major teams have a longer streak than Xavier of not finishing last in their conference. 1982 was the last time Xavier finished last in their conference. So, one of the longest streaks in the country of teams that, don't find the cellar. And I don't think they will finish last. I think they're better than last in the Big East, but,
Who do you think finishes last?
I think Georgetown does. I think Georgetown's really bad.
That's incredible to say.
I think Georgetown is really bad and their problems are only going to balloon and get worse. And I think
Marquette isn't very talented.
Marquette's not great, but like they lost by 3 against Villanova in a game they probably could have won. They beating Xavier, I guess, is not saying much, but like they have, Xavier again. They have DePaul twice if they can win those. They have Georgetown. They have Providence twice. Like, I think Marquette, for as absolutely terrible as they've been, won't find the basement. I think it might be a battle of Georgetown and
Providence.
I was gonna say, could you imagine that year 3 of Ed Cooley and Kim English, and it might be Georgetown and Providence duking it out
for the cellar of the conference? They deserve each other.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I had, the only other note, was Donovan Dent. For all of the talk that Donovan Dent got in the preseason and to be clear, the number that he commanded at UCLA, he was never coming to Xavier, but he was never like a prolific 3-point shooter from the sense of volume. He never took a ton in his career, but he was a good 3-point shooter, right? I mean, he was 40% last year on only 65 attempts. He's 2 for 22 from 3 this year. And if you've watched UCLA, he's not playing well at all. And maybe it's because he goes from a really high flying system to a really kind of clunky system with Mick Cronin.
Well, seriously, what a coach for him to switch to.
That's what I mean. Like, I know he's a LA guy and he wanted to go back to LA, and there was the allure of playing for UCLA, which, I was talking to somebody, I guess that was a big thing for him of wanting to play for UCLA. But for as much talk as he got in the offseason, certainly has not been the potential All-American that some people thought he might be. So that's interesting.
You think things are bad now. How would you feel if this team was performing slightly better, but still not looking like they're for sure a tournament team, yet they had paid $3 million for a 6'2" version of Desmond Claude?
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's what we're talking about here. So, like, that's the other part of this whole transfer portal revenue share NIL deal is it's like the other side of that coin can be really frustrating just as much as this side of it is. So,
and then look at the freshmen. I mean, now we're just going to start doing a national podcast here, so I won't get too down the dirt road. But like, look at like Darren Peterson at Kansas, or Michael Brown at Louisville. Or some of these guys are, whether they're hurt or not, just the rumors that are going around, and it's because they're getting paid so much money. Are they hurt? Are they not? Are they just sitting out? Are they collecting a check? Are they going to play? What is it? I mean, there's a lot swirling, but as it relates to Xavier in the discussion in the offseason, Donovan Dent's not working out. Maybe a casualty of the system under Mick Cronin, but at least this year, it's not like they're swinging and missing on an All-American.
Yeah. Well, Paul, thank you so much for doing this. I know this took a while, but appreciate you sticking it out and
talking hoops, brother. I don't mind.
Talking Xavier. It's been a little while since we were able to do that. So this was good stuff. Thank you for that. Check out the Rebound Rundown. Check out the Richard Pitino podcast. Is there anything else that you have going on? We've seen you on TV. You're doing great calling games.
Awesome. Super excited about that. Some national TV games. I'll have a couple more of those. I'll have the first couple of rounds of the CAA tournament in March. March is going to be awesome. I mean, I'm really looking forward. I was planning out the championship week schedule of what we're going to try to do to cover Xavier and NKU and Miami championship week. And I think I've planned it out to a way that we can bounce from Indy to New York to Cleveland and get it all in. But yeah, I'm excited, man. I mean, the rundown's been awesome this year, and I appreciate everybody listening. And yeah, keep it moving.
I love to hear that. Love to hear that. Paul, thank you. Everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the message boards.
Yep.